Hello, good to have you back. We're on to lesson 18 of this beginners series. And during this lesson, we're going to look at word beginnings and word endings, doing some revision on theory that we've already covered and adding a little bit more. And then we're going to go on to look at how numbers are represented in Teeline. So let's start then with revision and see whether the work you've done since you last came to this channel has been productive and that you can write the word beginnings and endings without too much hesitation. I have 8 sentences and 72 words in total. So, first sentence, the player is very capable indeed of winning the tournament. So, the player is very capable indeed of winning the tournament. Feel free to pause the video at any time to give you a chance to write the words before you check the outlines. So just one or two things here then. We've got the able for capable there, and in winning the we've got the disjoined I for ing, and we've carried on straight down so that it says winning the. We know the ing and the is there because we've disjoined the ing. And tournament, we've taken the top off the N and we've put that M slightly shorter than normal on the T line to say meant. Sentence 2, the centre forward was reliable and never failed to impress. Okay, so the shortest way of writing the centre forward is to put the C through the centre and chop the wood. Remember, we chopped that W for wood, wide wood, etc. So we've got centre forward there. The centre forward was reliable and never failed to impress. Now you may be wondering why the R is in impress, because PR coming together, we write the next consonant through or at the side. We think about Preston. But in press, we would only have the S left to write. So if I was to think, right, PR's together in impress, so I'm going to write IMP and lift a pen so that I know PR's together. You've only got the S to write. We also know that disjoined S at the end of a word says S vowel S. So cases, losses, horses, etc. So that would actually say imposes. Now the sense of the sentence may very well give you the difference between impress and imposes, and as it does here. However, for the avoidance of doubt, we are going to leave the R in impress, because we don't want to adopt the theory from another part of our learning. So the next one, the captain was extremely honourable. So the captain, CPTN, was extremely as a special outline and honourable. H is silent and the able goes where the outline ends. So because that ends with an R, the able will go at the top near the R. This prevents the hand from having to move around on the paper and gives us more speed. Next one, the odds of that particular jockey winning the next race are not favourable. The odds of that special outline particular jockey. I'm keeping the O in because J and C don't join very well. Winning the next race are not particularly, I'm going to add the I this time, and favourable, downward F before the V, and again the able goes up there. I didn't actually say particularly favourable, did I? I said jockey winning the next race are not favourable. I didn't say particularly favourable. Sorry, I'll take that word out. The next sentence. The decision to make a substitution in the last 10 minutes was reasonable. The decision to make a substitution in the last 10. For minutes you can write it in full, or you can just put mins. In the last 10 minutes was reasonable. So was reasonable. Make sure that S goes inside the curve of the N in reasonable. Next one, you must take full responsibility for doing this job yourself. You must take full responsibility for doing this. Again, disjoin the ing and carry on coming down. It's not the this time, it's this. Just add the S on the end. Of course, in Teeline brackets, you could have done doing and this separately. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Job, J, and a big circle for B, and yourself, yourself. No F. And the last, the penultimate one, it was a moment of extreme tension. It was a always together moment of extreme tension. T-N and shin. If your tension is a bit lower so that the N is touching the line, it's fine, as long as the T's on the T line. And the last one, the argument was disappointing. May be able to squash that on. The argument, AR blend, was, and disappointing, DSPNT, and a disjoint I for ing. So there are our 72 words. So I'm now going to dictate that at 60 words per minute. So clearly it will take me 72 seconds. Do your best with it, but don't worry if you miss something out. Ready? The player is very capable indeed of winning the tournament. The centre forward was reliable and never failed to impress. The captain was extremely honourable. The odds of that particular jockey winning the next race are not favourable. The decision to make a substitution in the last 10 minutes was reasonable. You must take full responsibility for doing this job yourself. It was a moment of extreme tension. The argument was disappointing. So that was exactly 60 words a minute, 1 word per second. Remember, these words are longer than you would normally have in an examination situation, because the very nature of word beginnings, word endings, are that we will often have very long words with a number of syllables. However, the beauty of video is that you can do the practice in the way that suits you. So the first time round, you may want to have just followed the outlines through with your eye. The second time, you may decide to try and do the first 2 sentences and then pause it and build up until you can get the whole of the 72 words at 60 words a minute. And indeed, for those of you who are striving for a higher speed, of course, you can transcribe it and then you could dictate it to yourself at a higher speed. So at 80, it would be just less than a minute. So now I would just like to add 1 or 2 other word beginnings and endings. These particular ones I don't think you'll use very often, but that's no excuse for not knowing them. So the first one is words that begin with micro, such as microwave. You write the MC and then the rest of the word at the side of it. If you forget and put the R in, it's not the end of the world. At least you don't have to lift the pen. But I don't want you to finish this section without knowing all the word beginnings and word endings that exist in Teeline. Whether you use them or not is entirely up to you. When we looked at the core of the word beginnings, you'll remember that I showed you a disjoined M for multi, which is above the line like this. So that would be multitude. So we've already done that one, but now we're going to look at magni, or any vowel there. And the difference between multi and magni is you would put the G in. So that would be magnitude. Next one is words that begin with anti, such as antipasta. All you do is you put the AN on the T line and the rest of the outline at the side. So antipasta, antenatal, anticipate, and so on. But again, if you forgot and you put the T in, it's only one stroke and you haven't got to lift the pen. So it wouldn't be the end of the world, but I don't want you ever to come to some reading practice and think, well, we didn't learn that in the Teeline Beginners series. So at least you're aware of it. Whether you use it or not is entirely up to you. And the last one is one that I have, if you like, invented. Well, over the years since Teeline was first devised in 1968, lots of people, lots of authors have added bits, improved, if you like, bits. And I have come across the word suspect quite a lot in passages to do with crime. So the word suspect. So words that begin with S, vowel S. I made a decision to disjoin the S like we do when we do the says or says at the end of a word. So just as a reminder, we do losses, houses, cases, don't we, with the disjoined S in word endings. And that saves us joining the S to another S using a vowel indicator, because that process is very, very slow and we need speed. However, that's never applied and has never applied at the beginning of a word. But for the word suspect, because I noticed it came up quite a lot, I would do that disjoined S and then the P. And to me, in my head, that was my stick man or woman. That was my suspect. And derivatives of that word, I added on other letters. So if I added a D, that becomes suspected. He or she was suspected of this crime. And when the witness saw them, they looked very suspicious. And so my advice to you would be to add suspect, suspected and suspicious to your special outlines list and learn them, so that when that word does come up, you will be able to write it in the quickest possible form. However, as always, the choice is yours. And if you wish to carry on doing this, SUSPCT for suspect, that is absolutely fine. So that's what I want to add for word beginnings. And then there's a couple of things I'd like to add for word endings. Now, in the core of the learning, we looked at words ending in ability and ability. So we've done those, and you won't need me to remind you, although I will, that it's a disjoined A for ability and it's a disjoined I for ability. That will not change. That will always remain. The crucial letter is this B. Both those words end in litty, but they've got the B before them. Now there are some words that end in litty but don't have a B in them, such as the word quality. That ends in litty, but there's no B, just QUA. And for words that don't have the B, we can disjoin the L in an upwards direction. So quality would be this, quality. Facility would be this, facility. And if that become plural, then because the L's going upwards, we would write the S at the top. So facilities with the S at the top inside the curve. other examples. So you might have sexuality, sexuality, agility, agility, legality, legality, and so on. So you may find one or two, quite a few words with the litty at the end, but please don't change from the ability and the ability. This only applies when there's no B in the word, just when it ends in litty. So, litty is a new one for today. And ritty. Same principle, this time disjoining the R instead of disjoining the L. So I might want to do charity, majority, charity, majority, minority, minority. Again, not a lot of words that end in ritty, but you can disjoin that R. Now don't make it too big, normal sized R, because we don't want it to be confused with a full stop. Again, if you decided that you're going to write charity in full, you've only got to join the R and add the T and the I, and you've got it in full. As always with Teeline, you do have choices. Those choices are yours. Next one is words that end in tivity. That's new for today. So, activity. Disjoining the TV and putting it on the T line makes it say tivity, activity. So, relativity would be relativity. And sensitivity, and so on. And finally, the words ending in ject. Now, when we did the sentences to revise the word beginnings and endings, we had the word jockey. And I said to you, the J and the C don't join very well. So if you remember, we retain the O in the word jockey to help the J and the C to join. They don't join very well, J and C. So words that end in ject, we just put the J. So subject, SBJ, object, OBJ, reject, R and the disjoin J. If you extend those words such as rejected, you just add the D to it, and so on. So that's ject at the end of a word. Another one which is topical at the moment, inject, I-N and J. So that really concludes all the word beginnings and all the word endings that you may come across in written form, and now you will be able to recognise them all. How many of them you use is entirely up to you. And now that just leaves me to show you how we represent numbers in Teeline. So you'll be glad to know that numbers in Teeline are very similar to the way they're written in longhand. For example, if I had a number like 167, I would simply write it like that. And as a matter of fact, if you have numbers in a passage, it's a real boost to the speed because the words are counted. So 167 is 5 words, and yet you're going to just write those 3 digits that you've known almost since you could write. So it's so easy. When you transcribe in an examination, you would write the words all out in full. That way you'd be able to check, say you were doing a 2-minute passage at 100, you'd be able to check that you've got 200 words there. But if you're transcribing online, then very often the program that you're using will count the words for you, and that will give you the assurance that you've not missed any of them out, providing you put these in words. But now let's think about these. All 3 of those on their own might look like something else, so it would be very difficult to write a 1 on its own and be absolutely confident that it's not going to be confused with an H. And so therefore the 1 would be circled. The 6 might look like a B, so we need to circle it. The 7 might look like the word the, so we need to circle it. Even the 2 might look like ND for need. So we need to circle it. Other numbers, 0 to 9, you would be able to leave as they are. I don't think you'd confuse 9 with anything else, 8 with anything else, 3 with anything else. So you don't really need to circle those. But if you wish to, of course, you can. So now we've looked at 1 to 10. We've looked at numbers that are quite common, like 167, 148. In other words, if there's more than one digit, we can write them together and be confident that they are a number and nothing else. But now let's move on to 100, so 800. If we look at the word 100 in longhand, it's got that DR in the middle. So 100 is represented by putting a D underneath and doubling it for the R. So 800 would be that, 800. And recently, in recent textbooks, authors have written a dot to say pounds. Now, in the early textbooks, they wrote PDS for pounds, but recently it's been changed to a dot. So if you're learning from a textbook and you've seen that, you carry on with it. So that's £800. So this would be £900 and so on. Now you might think, is it really worth it? Why can't I just do 900? And surely the pound sign is a type of shorthand. Well, I take your point. But for every time you have to lift the pen and put a nought, you are wasting time. Or you are taking time, should I say. And time is of the essence. When you get to 120, you've got to write 2 words every second. And what when we get to thousands? What when we get to millions? Will we carry on writing the noughts? So we may as well start at 100 by putting the DR underneath. Next comes 1000 then. And we're just going to use the T. So 8,000, 9,000, £9,000. It's easy, isn't it? It's good. So what about if we get a mix of hundreds and thousands? So supposing we've got 4,200, we're not going to have to write 1,000 and the 100. We're going to write £4,200 because it's the same, of course, as £4,200. So we're just writing along with the speaker, £4,200. And again, transcribe all in words. So now we get to million. And when we write million, we just write an M underneath it. So this would be 9 million, 10 million pounds. What about if it's a mix of hundreds and thousands? So supposing we have 300,000, we'll write 3, DR for 100, and then a T for 1,000. 300,000 and 300,000 pounds. I would suggest that you take a few minutes to just absorb all that and practice some numbers before you continue, and certainly before you take the dictation, which will ensue. However, just before we do that, let me look at dates. So for example, if we said 1951, this was built in 1951, then you would write it just as if you were writing 1951. And the context of the sentence would tell you 1951 is how you would transcribe it, as opposed to 1951. If the date is last century, we'll use that. If it's this century, so for example, if we was to say in 2015, we could just write the 15, providing, of course, that the passage, the sentence, tells us quite clearly that it is a date. If you are up with the speaker and you feel it will help you, of course, you can put the 20 in. So 2015, 2022, etc. But it is acceptable to just put the last 2 digits if we're talking about this century. And now go back to history lessons at school. If you said something was the 18th century, you'd put a big C round it for century, wouldn't you? Well, very often we're talking perhaps about a church that was built in the 18th century, that is still acceptable in Teeline because our Teeline C and our longhand C are the same. So although it's massive, we recognise that as 18th century without putting the TH in, but we would transcribe 18th century. Now that just leaves me with fractions and percentages. So supposing I wanted to say 2%, I would write the 2, and for the percent I wouldn't do this, I would do this, PR. Now you might say, well, why not do that? It is a type of shorthand, it is acceptable. But think about it, you've got 1, 2, 3 symbols and you've got to lift the pen twice, whereas here you're keeping the pen on, so that's 2%. And if it was 5% per annum, you just write the P for percent and another P alongside it, and that would say percent per annum. So 2%, 5% per annum, 9% per annum. What about if there's a fraction in there? Let's say 3.5%. You can write the 3, the fraction without the dividing line, and then just the PR for percent. 3.5%, 3.5% per annum. Again, you need to just pause the video and you need to practice these a little bit more and just absorb them before you carry on to do the dictation. And again, of course, you are free to repeat the dictation or repeat the lesson until you've got them. You won't come across numbers too often, but of course there's always the financial situation. If you're taking notes of a meeting and it's got a financial background, then you might have quite a few numbers in the same passage. So once you've paused, absorbed, you'll be ready for the dictation, which is now going to follow. And I have written a 100-word passage, which I shall dictate for 2 minutes at 50 words per minute. And I think you will find it a little bit easier than you did the dictation earlier in the lesson, because as I said before, numbers are a bit of a gift. So here is the passage then, 100 words, 2 minutes at 50 words per minute. Ready? We have lived at 34 Main Road for several years. We bought the house in 2015 for £249,000. We managed to pay £10,000 less than the asking price of £259,000. The £10,000 saving paid our solicitors' fees of £2,000, our estate agent's costs of £3,000, and other general expenses, amounting to a total of £4,920. We estimate the house has increased in price by about 20% and is now worth in the region of £300,000. So if you transcribe that and your longhand is correct, then it doesn't matter if you've made one or two errors in your shorthand, as long as you've been able to transcribe accurately. And you should have a maximum of 10 minutes. Allow yourself a maximum of 10 minutes to transcribe 100 words, regardless of how fast it's being dictated. So let's have a look at your outlines then. So we started with, we have lived at 34 Main Road for several years. So hopefully you've joined together, we have lived at 34, doesn't need to be circled, it's 2 digits together, Main Road, and because that's a proper noun, ideally you need those little dashes underneath to indicate such, but if you've missed them out, it doesn't matter. 4, several is a special outline, just FB and years, like so. We bought the house in 2015. Now we're talking about this century. So we bought the house in, now you could have just wrote 15 because it's 2015, but if you put the 2 and the 0 in before the 1 and the 5, that's fine. For £249,000. For £249,000. We managed to pay £10,000 less than the asking price. We managed to pay, I'd put the full A after the P and also after any H's if I were you. We managed to pay £10,000, £10,000 less than the asking price. Price is another of those words where PR comes together, but if you disjoin the C, it would look like unts. So I'll put the R in. Of £259,000. The £10,000 saving, the £10,000 saving, paid our solicitors' fees, of £2,000, our estate agents' costs, of £3,000, and other general expenses, and other, long T for THR, general special outline, just GN, expenses, that disjoined S at the end, save joining the S together with the other S with an indicator, amounting to, now did you remember amount is a special outline, AM, shorter M than normal, so amounting has got the ing at the end, to a total of £4,900. £4,900. Oh no, sorry, it was £4,920. So £4,920. 4 digits together. We estimate the house has increased. We estimate the house has increased, no N in increased, in price by about 20%, about 20%, and is now worth in the region of, and is now worth in the region of £300,000. £300,000. So there's your 100 words. If you found the 50 too fast or too slow, I would advise you from your longhand transcription to dictate it to yourself. It's very difficult to dictate shorthand because of the word count. So that's when I'm dictating something to you, I have to write it out in longhand, do the word count, particularly with numbers, put the slashes in for every 10 words, and then of course if you're dictating at 80, the first 20 words in a quarter of a minute, you're up to 40 words in the half minute and so on. So you have to work out the word count. But in that one it's 100 words and I dictated it in 2 minutes, so that was 50 words per minute. You've done really well if you've got all the outlines right. If you want to practice anything that you made a mistake on and then take it down again, that's always a good idea. Days of the week and months of the year are very much as you would expect them to be. If we were writing a quick note in longhand, we would abbreviate Monday to MON, Tuesday to TUES, Wednesday to WED, and so on. We wouldn't bother with the day at the end. Exactly the same in Teeline. So the days of the week are on the top line of the board, and then the months of the year are on the rest of the board. So January, we must remember to put the I at the end, not just Jan, because otherwise it would be confused with June, of course. So January with the I at the end. The others are quite self-explanatory, except perhaps March, which is the M doubles for R on the T line, because the C and the H is lost its legs. We don't worry with the C and the H. So those are the days of the week and the months of the year. So we really are at the end now of the theory. That house that we built the foundations for is built. It's on that skyline. It's absolutely wonderful and ready to move into. But of course we've got to furnish it. We've got to paint and decorate it inside. We've got to make it cosy. We've got to make it comfortable. And for your comfort, you need to be able to not be scared of Teeline, not be scared that you can't read it back, not be scared to have a go in any situation. And in order to reach that point, you've got to do lots and lots of practice. We do listen very carefully to your feedback, and some of you have asked for hints and tips on how to practice on your own. If you've just got 5 minutes, there's certain things you can do. If you've just got 10 minutes, there's certain things you can do. If you've got half an hour, I'll show you how to fill that half hour very productively, because we haven't always got an hour or 2 hours to work on things, but it is important to do it every single day in order to reach that level of comfort. So in the next 2 sessions, we're going to look at the key. You're going to give keys out to the people who you trust to move into your house. The key to the speed. And the key to the speed is quite clearly in word groupings. It's in the common word groupings like I will be, you are able to, I am sorry to say, I am pleased to say, I am sure you will be able to. All those little common words that come up in every single passage, that's definitely the key to the speed. So we're going to work on those things. We're going to work on dictation practice, and we're going to work on exam practice. We're going to give you those hints and tips on how you can be productive on your own. But we're not going to abandon you. We've already got the speed development series written, some of you have discovered already, and that's going to take you right through to 120 words per minute. And if you wish, we're going to carry on developing these videos, if that's what you wish. And if it's helping you, then it helps us to know that it is helping you. So work on the extra word beginnings and word endings that I've shown you today. Work on the numbers, work on the dictation, and before we see you again, don't get worried and don't get stressed. Let's love Teeline together.